Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Suleiman. Today our focus is on INEC's demand for increase in election budget. The Independent National Electoral Commission INEC says it requires 305 billion naira. I take it again. 305 billion naira to organize the 2023 elections and 2 or so off-season elections next year. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, disclosed this during his presentation of the Commission's 2023 general election budget to the Senate Committee on Appropriation in Abuja yesterday. The amount is a drastic shoot-up from 2019 general elections budget, which cost INEC and Nigeria 189 billion naira. The cost of the 2015 election was 108 billion naira. In other words, the cost of Nigeria's elections keep going up, even though we would expect that they should be going down. INEC also made it clear that the budget being demanded is separate from the yearly 40 billion naira budget of the Commission. This amount is for the Commission's recurrent expenditure. Also, President Muhammadu Buhari has cited rising cost of elections as one of several reasons for declining assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill sent to him by the National Assembly a month ago. Still, the civil society and other democracy campaigners have lamented the president's decision as a lost opportunity to write his name in gold and to leave a lasting legacy for Nigerian democracy. And today, we're looking at all of these issues. So we ask, what does all of this mean for Nigerian democracy? Why is INEC asking of so much money every time there is going to be an elections? Why does it need so much money? What does it do with money? Is free and fair election more important to Nigerians than food on the table? These are the questions we want to answer today on this program. Joining me on the program, of course, are Barrister Oluwole Osaze Uzi, a legal practitioner and former director of INEC Voter Education and Publicity. And of course, our very own Malam Awal Musa Rafsanjani, the Executive Director of Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But then, as usual, we'll take 1 minute to give you a round of politics in the news today. Stay tuned.
Naira for the conduct of the 2023 general elections as well as off-cycle elections scheduled for 2022. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakub disclosed this when he appeared before the Senate Committee on Appropriations at the National Assembly. The committee had invited the INEC chairman to brief it on projected expenditure for elections for the proposal to be captured in the 2022 budget. Justifying the request, the INEC boss said the commission has 8 by-elections pending, 3 federal constituencies and 5 state constituencies, as well as Ekiti and Osun governorship elections. The electoral body also suspended indefinitely the Ekiti East by-election. The media director, Senator Andy Uba Governorship Organization, Dr. Ikechukwu Onya, has said that Senator Andy Uba and his party, the All Progressives Congress, will appeal the judgment of Justice Inyang Eko of the Federal High Court that nullified its candidate's nomination as a candidate of APC for the November 6, 2021 Anambra governorship election. Onya also accused the All Progressives Grand Alliance in Anambra of doing everything possible to derail Uba's attempt to overturn the governorship election result at the Election Petitions Tribunal. However, the APGA coordinator Media Affairs Chinedu Obigwe, in his reaction, described the APC's comments as empty. Meanwhile, the Anambra Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal has relocated its sittings from Awka to Ilorin in Kwara State. Suraja Gosau, secretary of the tribunal, disclosed this when he spoke to newsmen on Tuesday. He, however, did not disclose the reasons for the relocation, saying it was based on administrative directive. A former governor of Kano State, Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, says the President Muhammadu Buhari will not sign the Electoral Act Amendment Bill because governors have pressured him not to approve the provision for direct primary. Kwankwaso said this during a chat with newsmen ahead of the National Assembly's recess. The former governor disclosed that mandatory direct primaries would provide a level playing field and ensure that popular candidates emerge. He, however, said because such mandatory primaries could make governors less powerful, they would not support it.
Welcome back. We were just beginning the discussion on the cost of, conducting elections in Nigeria, which research has shown is one of the highest in the world. That even countries like India and so on don't spend as much as we do, even though they have up to 1 billion voters. But we'll come to that in a moment. Barrister. The Nigerians are in shock, that the president has declined accent to the electoral bill. Is that what INEC was also expecting?
Thank you very much. Well, I no longer speak for the Commission. I no longer speak for INEC. So I cannot put my fingers on the pulse of the Commission at this moment. But it will be a shock to some people, but not so much a shock to others. And INEC is an official organ of government. It's one of the executive bodies named in the Constitution. When the bill is passed by the National Assembly, I expect that it would, in a normal course of events, receive the assent of the President. And but where the President has some reservations about the bill as a whole or particular clauses in it, the Constitution realizes that it's not every time the President is the rubber stamp for the National Assembly and vice versa. They both have their own roles to play. And there are certain oversights, certain things that the National Assembly may not see that the President will see, receiving expert advice from the Attorney General as the Chief Legal Officer, and also, in this particular case, consulting with stakeholders like the Commission. The Commission, this bill has been passed by the National Assembly. Does it meet your needs? I think that's clarification was sought.
One of the stakeholders consulted was INEC itself.
Correct.
And at least what we had, the little that the media that was available to the public, was that INEC said that if the law mandates them to do so, they will be able to meet up with the challenge. But the president said otherwise in his letter.
I don't know whether the president said it or why. I don't think there's any discrepancy between the two positions. INEC has always maintained, not so much, I am not privy to the letter they wrote back to the reply they gave to the president. In fact, from the media, what I read was that it said that possibly that other stakeholders should be further consulted. Its position is the same as any other constitutional creation or statutory body. Whatever law you give to us, we'll work with it. If there are observations about their efficacy, how good they are, we'll make our observations known to the executive and to the legislature so that in future there will be attempts at harmonizing or attempts at correcting by way of an amendment to that bill. By the way, the bill is a repeal and a reenactment bill. So it's actually the Electoral Act bill before the president will
Mr. Rafsanjani, your agency been working on issues of elections, and especially with the National Assembly for a very long time. But the president said that he has consulted with relevant ministries, departments, and other agencies of government. Should the president not have broadened that horizon of consultation to include people in civil society, the media, and so on, because this is an issue that generated quite a lot of interest. Many Nigerians spoke about it.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, it is really a sad development that after spending so much energy, so much resources and time to amend this Electoral Act for the second time since when the president resumed office, it is very sad development that very important clauses that have been amended that will help to ensure electoral transparency and improve election generally in Nigeria is now receiving this negative response. Secondly, the National Assembly, as a representative of the people, they had conducted, very wide consultation and also public hearings. Government agencies that the president is making reference to, they all came to the public hearing, and they did not submit any position that now we are hearing from the president. Thirdly, the president cannot or should not have consulted only a beneficiary of electoral fraud in Nigeria. He should have widened the scope of consultation to include victims, those who did not want electoral transparency in Nigeria. Because if he had listened to Nigerians have said that, look, we are tired of this electoral fraud. And even himself, in the past, he had made claim that he was a victim of electoral fraud in Nigeria. Now, 6 years after in office, Mr. President has failed woefully to submit any bill to amend the Electoral Act to make it more transparent, more inclusive, and more democratic. So the president's refusal to sign this is not a good development in terms of his even belief or commitment to fight electoral fraud or corruption generally, because political corruption is the main source of all the corruption that we are seeing. And if through electoral process people can come in and perpetuate their their mismanagement of the nation, then I thought president should have done something drastically within the period that he is occupying office to contribute toward ensuring that you restore confidence on Nigerians about our electoral system. Right now, many Nigerians are not interested to vote. They didn't want to even go into the electoral process because they believe that the electoral process is not a process that can help usher a more transparent and accountable leadership in the country. So president's consultation is so narrow, so limited, because it didn't consult the victims of electoral fraud, who are Nigerians, who are the voters. You only consulted those who enjoy the status quo.
Interesting. Barrister, here, one of the reasons that the president cited in his long letter to INEC was the incapacity, in quotes, of INEC to monitor elections in over 8,900 wards. Yes, wards in the country in the event of a presidential primary election. Would that constitute an impossible challenge for INEC? I know you've said that you no longer work for INEC. That's true. But what you know of INEC in the past cannot be wiped up from your memory. So
that's correct.
Yes.
First of all, I think somebody used the expression representatives of the people. The president is also a representative of Nigerians. In a way, same way members of the National Assembly are elected, so also he is elected by direct franchise by Nigerians. So let's be clear on that.
But he was, when he was contesting and losing, he was always saying that, this is on record,
Correct.
He was always saying that he is a victim of electoral fraud.
Correct.
So when he comes in, people would expect that if there are any laws or amendments to existing laws that will help to strengthen the system, he will welcome it.
I agree absolutely with you, and I won't disagree with my comrade Afsinjani here, because it's actually the fourth time. Yes, we've heard that.
Yes, fifth. Some people are even saying the fifth time.
I think it's the fourth time. Yeah. And it is now provisions within the law for him to do so, if he has good reason to. And let's be clear on one thing. To be fair to the president, I don't speak for him either. Yeah. He has pinpointed certain things that he thinks are faulty with the bill. I personally have some reservations about that bill. It's not a cure-all. It's not a magic one that does anything. And people have not critically looked at that direct parameters that he keeps referring to. People have not looked at the critical aspects of it. There are not enough safeguards in that bill.
So that's why some people are suggesting, sign this one. And then you bring forth with the amendments.
The law does not work like that. If you have an opportunity to correct...
But the PIA worked that way.
If you have an opportunity to correct... No, sir. If you have to correct something, you correct it. You don't sign a bill and it becomes law and you say, come and bring an amendment. And one thing I agree with you in your analysis is this. the president could have introduced an executive bill to the National Assembly to amend the Electoral Act and even the Constitution. He had the power so to do. There are many executive bills that have been presented for the National Assembly. Having been a victim, according to him, of several electoral frauds, one would have expected that an executive bill prepared by the Attorney General, his chief legal officer, sent to him and sent to the National Assembly for consideration. But by the way, since 1999, no executive bill has been provided for an amendment to the Electoral Act. In 1986, what became the Electoral Act was presented by INEC, and there was a procedural problem. Is this an executive member's bill? Is it a member's bill? Is it an executive bill?
Exactly.
And we had to talk to Professor Sumbo, who was the chairman of the Senate Committee on it, who now adopted it as his bill, as the committee's bill, sponsors of the bill, to get it formally introduced. What INEC did, and as its independence at that time, was to send a copy to the Attorney General, copy to the President, and say, we are presenting this bill. So it's going to go to the National Assembly. If you have any reservations or any comments to make, please, this is for your information and further necessary action. INEC did not wait for him to present a bill, because we knew if we had waited, in 2004, we presented our bill, which later became 2006 Act. INEC did that.
Thank you.
This is a private member's bill prepared by Senator the Deputy Senate President of the Senate, and I don't know, there are 2 or 3 of them who sponsors the bill in the Senate, and I think their colleagues in the House of Representatives did the same thing.
Thank you. So, but that's an important dimension which he raised earlier, that the president himself has not really come up with any.
But INEC can monitor. To answer your question directly, by the way, INEC can monitor. It can build this, not directly, because it has 16,000 staff.
Let me bring Rafsanjani into the discussion. Another problem, or another challenge that the president cited in his letter was that our election has already been over-monetized, that people have to spend a lot of money in buying voters. This was more or less roughly the president's words, vote buying and so on. And then the letter said that if you now introduce direct primaries, it means that those who are buying votes will now have more money will now have more people to bribe in order to buy votes. Does that mean the president is subsidizing those who are buying votes, so that they don't have to buy votes for many people from many people? Because that's what the logical.
I don't know those who wrote this to president to present, because he did not make verbal talk on this. Somebody wrote this, and it was now presented as president thing. But if you look at it critically, it's a contradiction. First and foremost, we all talk about issues of cost of running governance, the need to reduce cost of running governance. This is something that we even expected government to champion, but we haven't seen that much happening even under this administration. When you look at the recent report by Auditor General, you see a lot of infraction, you see a lot of waste, duplication, and unaccounted spending, which we expected under this government. The president will frown at and ensure that public offices, they did not abuse public funds.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, the issues of vote buying. We have seen how it benefited both parties. In fact, federal government introduced a scheme, a program, which was only functional during campaign and during election, which they were calling trader money.
Okay.
Since after that after election,
you mean Buhari's government?
Buhari government.
Okay.
Since after the election in 2019, you do not hear any trader money again, because the election has gone and that's it. And that is also tantamount to vote buying.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because it was not even in the appropriation. It was not part of the government, programs and policy before they come into power. So they just wake up and notice that, okay, how do we get support? You don't need to come out to say I'm going to buy a boat. But when you are sharing this money and you stop after the election, there's connotation, there's implication for that.
That's the standard way in a democracy for governments to win elections.
But that is not captured in any government written policy, and that's why the thing is stop after they achieve what they want to achieve. it's been stopped. Now, I think it is important that we are honest ourselves. We are all talking about how to improve the electoral process in Nigeria. And if the president genuinely, sincerely believes that this act has shortcomings, let him point out those shortcomings. And like I want to also say to my colleague here that laws in this country have been passed with those reservations, and later the executive come back with this, even on in the case of appropriation act, after it is passed, you see them, they will come with supplementary budget. So because you cannot close the lawmaking, it's a process. You understand? But what Nigerians are saying is that we cannot afford to repeat 2019, where the president made an excuse of saying that it was close to time for the election, so he will not do that. Now, you have ample time. So instead of Mr. President to send back without, saying that, okay, these are the areas I want you to reconsider. In his letter, he's not asking the National Assembly to reconsider those. These are the reasons why these are the reasons why I'm not saying. So there's a difference between you pointing out those ones that you want them to reconsider for further legislative action, and then just keeping quiet and say, because of this, I'm not signing. This is where we found out this is why we faulted President's stand. We did not say that it should be a rubber stamp, but let him, in all honesty, look at this critically and say, okay, because so much money has been spent, so much time has been spent on this, and we cannot afford to look at all the beautiful recommendation in that bill and then throw away everything.
Exactly. That's what. But it's like you wanted to react to what he's saying.
Yes, let's get.
Otherwise,
it's important we get things in context. Okay. What the Constitution requires is for him to state his reasons, and it will appear he has done so. So when you're asking somebody to do,
but there's a difference between what the law requires, and there's a whole lot of latitude in what a president can do. The law says, okay, give reasons. He's given reasons, but he can equally do as he is suggesting, that okay, instead of just giving reasons that these are my reasons for declining accent, these are the areas I want you to look at. The law does not.
I don't know, that's not semantics, but basically, following the letter, and I dare say the spirit of the Constitution, the president has said, look, I have reservations about this and that. That is why I am unable to give my assent at this time. He should do so within 30 days. And he has done so. Naturally, that puts the spotlight, the beam light, on the areas he thinks that he has problems with.
That's all right. So the one argument that has actually been missing, one aspect of this whole issue that has actually been missing in the whole discussion is the rising confidence that Nigerians and many different institutions have in INEC. Because in 2007, in 2003, and previous elections, hardly will somebody be saying, okay, INEC is now the solution to our electoral problems. But that's what people seem to be saying now, that, okay, let INEC be able to transmit results electronically. Everybody was on the side of INEC with confidence that they can do it. Let INEC monitor direct primaries. So all of these are indication of rising confidence in INEC as an institution. So where does that, if you have this rising confidence, for the president to now decline accent, based on the reasons that he gives, does it mean the president doesn't have the same confidence in INEC that Nigerians share?
Well, I don't think I see the correlation, with due respect. I don't see the correlation between that. I think I agree that there's been a lot of confidence building on the part of INEC, and it has paid off, it's paid its dividends. And Representative Jani here, Mr. Rodriguez, has been one of the greatest critiques of INEC, and rightly so, by the way, pointing out shortcomings, and not in a destructive, but in a constructive manner to help improve. And I dare say, I think INEC is the most improved public institution that we have in this country today. But at the same time, INEC is a pathfinder. It's gone even ahead of the politicians and ahead of the people themselves. Nobody forced it or compelled it to introduce these technological innovations. Engaging with civil society, engaging with technological providers, it has service providers have come to see that there's a lot more we can do with technology. But step by step.
Are these not the same reasons why the president ought to have at least given them a chance to try? Because the reasons
my problem is that
yes,
my problem is that the president's action has thrown away the good with the bad, and unfortunately, that has been the system put in place, at least in this republic, is that because of one bad, let me use that word, because of one bad thing, you threw away 99 good things. That is not so good. There are many wonderful things in the electoral bill that the president withheld. So many, many good things. And in a sense, the non-assent has put a cog in the wheels of progress in one sense. But I don't want to see things as just black and white. There are lots of gray areas. What has the president done? I have withheld my assent. What should be the next step? And if the National Assembly was serious, within 1 month, it can go tidy up those things and represent it to the president.
Thank you. That's the question I was reserving for Mr. Rafsanjani, who has worked quite a lot with the National Assembly. What's the way for the National Assembly and, by implication, for Nigerians? Of course, the president represents Nigerians, but the National Assembly also represents Nigerians at a different level. Yes.
So I think the way to get out of this quagmire is for the executive to be sincere, and in particular for the president to be sincere on what he thinks, should be. It should be a kind of dialogue between the executive, represented by the president, the National Assembly, the INEC itself, and other stakeholders, including civil society, to look at critically what are these areas that we think can help improve our election in Nigeria, and what are these areas that we think might be a stumbling block based on the amendment proposed by the National Assembly now. Legislated by the National Assembly. So if we are open to have this healthy conversation, then I think there will not be any loser in this. But if
so the National Assembly should not wield their veto power.
No, the issue is that National Assembly had consulted with political parties, with the INEC, with civil society, with many stakeholders, and including executive, because the executive were actually represented. They came to do presentation during the public hearings, and that is why it shows lack of synergy between some of the executive arms. Because if there's a synergy, before those executive arms went to the National Assembly to participate in the public hearing, to make positions that are not different from what the Nigerian people have said and what even the National Assembly has done, then they should have also have that kind of conversation with the president. For example, the president should have been interested to knowing this, but it's like an abdication of your responsibility. You allow your children, and grandchildren to do things on your name, and they are the authentic children, and then you now come to disown them. Because what I see in this is simply disowning those executive arms that came to make presentation at the public hearing, which did not contradict what National Assembly has done. So that's why I say there should have been more proper synergy and maybe briefing to Mr. President. But what I have seen is not that there was no anything like that. I think it is just politics that play out here. Some people who are determined not to allow the status quo to change are the ones that have gone to do what they have done. Otherwise, even for the demand,
president doesn't have the courage of his own convictions.
If he has, why should he listen to tiny group of people who are beneficiary of wrong thing in the country as against the popular demand? Look, if you are in that public hearing, and if you notice public comment and conversation, TV, radio, newspaper, you would have seen that Nigerians are eager to have a change in our electoral law. So if all these things that Nigerians have been talking, and the president, he turned the other way around, then it means that this thing is consciously done and is deliberate. It's not that there was any missing link. No, it is. Because how many bills has the president said he want to go and consult? I'm asking you, since 2015, how many times has the president said I want to go and consult people again?
Just one moment, we'll be looking into that, particularly the issue of consulting with INEC, which itself is a novelty, so far. Maybe not novelty in law, but as far as with this government is concerned. But that will be when we return from break. Thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. You can follow us on all our social media handles, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram. We'll be right back. Stay.
The board and management of Media Trust Limited invites the general public to its annual Daily Trust Dialogue, themed 2023, The Politics, Economy and Insecurity. Date, 20th January 2022. Location, NAF Conference Center and Suites, Abuja. Time, 10 a.m. prompt. Chairman of the occasion, former Head of State General Abdulsalami Abubakar, GCFR. Guest Speaker, Governor of Kaduna State Malam Nasir Ahmed El Rufai. Guest Speaker, Governor of Ebonyi State Engineer David Umahi. Guest Speaker, former Chairman Federal Inland Revenue Service Mrs. Ifueko Omoigui Okauru. Moderator, Executive Director, Daria Media Nigeria Limited, Kadaria Ahmed. The event will be transmitted live on Trust TV, and all participants must observe COVID-19 protocols and wear their face masks.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Barrister, you were saying just before we were on break, you were saying that Malam Sanjani has been more critical of the National Assembly, of the presidency than the National Assembly in these processes. Yes. Although you don't want to appear like you're speaking for the president. It's a politics program. You can speak for or against anyone.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd rather I'm political, but I'm not partisan, and I don't belong to any political party or association. But I think we have concentrated too much in, I won't say fault finding and such, but saying concentrate too much on the president and the role he has played, without situating in a particular context. My understanding of his reservations about giving assent was contained in the particular clauses regarding direct primaries. Now, that was never an issue in any of the public hearings conducted by the National Assembly.
Not at all.
It was not an issue. Other issues were things like role of technology, transmission of results, and the National Assembly, you saw what the Senate did.
Yes.
But our House of Reps backtracked, and well, fortunately, they were able to harmonize those positions and hearken to the call of Nigerians. Up to the point of initially passed by both houses of National Assembly, political parties were left with the choice of whether to have direct or indirect primaries.
Yes.
That has always been the case.
Yes.
That was the case when the bills was passed by both houses.
Yes.
So where did this issue of mandatory direct primaries come from? I personally have no serious objections about mode of primaries. I feel that political parties should have a reasonable choice in this method that it wishes to deploy. And also, as long as the
but the point is still that they have had this reasonable choice for 20 years, since 1999.
Yes. And they've exercised
hasn't
both.
Taken us anywhere.
No, they have exercised both.
Okay.
And the critique of indirect, you can equally say there's a critique of direct. We saw in Anambra, you had a program on Senator Andy just now about the primaries. APC conducted said they conducted direct primaries.
That's critical.
And the number of votes scored by their candidates, now it's been voided. You had a basis for comparison, and so you saw sometimes how it can be subject to abuse. The APC conducted direct primaries for the presidential elections.
Okay.
People forget that, but there were serious issues about not.
Let's tell off into the cost of elections, because that's one of the major problems cited, reasons again cited by the president, that if INEC has to monitor direct primaries, then it will mean the cost of election. But that aside, we have a situation, Malam Sanjani, where INEC is demanding, an increase of over 120 billion naira, higher and above the budget for the last election in 2019. What's happening?
Well, I think generally this is what is going on in terms of government spending. Sometimes public institutions, they are not mindful about the cost of governance, the cost of spending. And in the case of INEC, I believe that it is possible first, INEC must have conducted need assessment, and they must have verifiable evidence to present to Nigerians that this is what it will cost them to do this. But I also believe that INEC is not supposed to start procurement of everything new. We have had so many facilities and equipment from 1999 to date, procure with the Nigerian money. Are we saying that all those facilities, all those equipment,
particularly those 4 years
including
ago,
the one that we just did the election like
Yes.
2 years ago,
Yes.
are we saying that all those ones, they are not useful anymore? Secondly, are we not saying that there should not be synergy between one government agency to another, where you don't have XYZ? If the next government agency has, you will synergize borrow and coordinate. So I think, it is the totality of spending that is in the mentality of virtually every government agencies in Nigeria. Otherwise, the money should have come, or the demand for the money should have come with proper justification and breakdown. Let Nigerians see what you want to do with this.
That's one of the problems, because INEC is supposed to come from first line charge, in the constitution. So, like the judiciary, all they need is 305 billion. And then they will explain
that envelope sin. That's
in a closed door session.
No, that's budgeting.
This is how
no. We have been advocating for the change of this envelope sin.
Yes.
Because this envelope sin is full of fraud and corruption and deliberate diversion of public taxpayers' money. Break down everything. Let everything. If INEC want to do anything, nobody is saying INEC should not have the resources to do. But let it be, known that let it be accountable. Let us know that you are procuring 20 vehicles. In the last 2 years, you have procured another 20 vehicles. Are you now saying that those 20 that you procured in 2019, they are no longer useful? Now you want to have new brand 20 cars? That's why I say it's good for them to break down and let Nigerians know, and they will appreciate whatever INEC is asking. But even at that, we need to be mindful of the cost of governing, because the economy cannot sustain this buoyant spending.
Thank you very much. Barrister.
Can I react to one or two things he said first?
Okay. So I was going to ask that it's not just that the INEC wants 305 billion. It is that on successive elections, the cost has been rising. Now, in economics, over time, this is a law. This is an economic law. Over time, the cost of the same thing that you do ought to be declining. So how is it that it is rising? For example, for example, in printing, for example, it will cost you, if it costs 1,000 Naira to cost 1,000 pages of a newspaper, for example, then an additional 1,000 shouldn't cost up to that 1,000 again. It should be like 800 and so on. Because like he said, certain things that you would need will have a longer shelf life than just 4 years, than just the previous election. So do you need to start all over again? Or how can we explain this huge increase?
Very, very easily, even though I'm not an economist. First of all, may I just quickly react to that to say that the breakdown is there. It is there. It's a budget. It's submitted to the National Assembly. It becomes a law. You can ask for it, and I believe it should be in the National Assembly website. So you can ask for another Freedom of Information Act or under any other laws so permitting. You can ask for it. They don't. First of all, that's on an envelope. The envelope is for the annual budget. The 40 billion for the annual budget, and that envelope has been there for under 5 years. The things that you buy, talking about your newsprint, what you bought 5 years ago, is it the same price today? You're talking of laws of economics. Of course not. Inflation. And we know the value of inflation and the rate of inflation has gone up incremental. It has never, ever gone down in this country in the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years.
120 billion.
In certain things, it has more than that. You know that. How much was diesel 5 years ago? How much is it today? How much was the dollar 5 years ago? And a lot of these things are dollar dependent. How much was dollar 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago? How much is it today? What is the rate of increase? This is not even a 100% increase in the budget. And the breakdown is there.
So what sort of things do INEC actually break down?
Good. Now, allowances, for example, and unfortunately, this is a country where you spend a lot of money on allowances, on training of INEC staff, training of the ad hoc staff, and things like that. It doesn't reduce; it increases. There are increased number of polling units. So automatically your cost will rise. You have more officials for each of those units from 123.
But the number of the increase in the number of polling units
yes, sir,
cannot match existing polling units. You know, because even for example, we had I think in 2015.
Yes, sir.
We had, was it 73 million voters? And then in
84.
No, that was 2019. In 2015, 73,
yes. Yeah.
You know, thereabouts,
Correct.
and then 2019 we had 84. So
Correct.
it's just about 10 million increase. But in this case, we're talking about an increase that is nearly double what you spent just 4 years ago.
Look, there are all sorts
Nigerians
of
will
factors.
need a lot of explanation.
All sorts of factors.
Yes.
I wasn't talking of total number of registered voters. I mentioned polling units. And for example, we have 4 officials in each polling unit. Last time there were 119,000, less than 120,000 polling units. Now there are well over 107,000 polling units. Already that's an increase of almost 33%. My everything might be wrong. Okay. That's one component. So you have a lot of more units to talk about. You have more officials to pay. You need more ad hoc staff, and you have to pay them. Now we're no longer using the card reader. We're using a different machine now, Beavers, and that's one with increased capacity than the card reader. You have to acquire those things from original equipment manufacturers. Okay. And you need a lot more than you had in 2019. And there has to be new, because those card readers have become obsolete. You're a technological person. You know how much technology has changed in the intervening period. Software has to be developed. Where you're not developing the software, you have to pay for licenses. Cloud, we have to pay for so much, a lot more. And a lot of these things, they have to make provision, for example, and by the way, the budget did come earlier. In this year's budget, there's 100 billion out of that 330 billion already been released. The requests have been made prior to now. Yes. So we should get things in context, factual.
That's correct.
So it's a balance we are talking of now.
205 billion. Still a lot of money.
It's still a lot of money, but in real terms, is it a lot of money?
Okay.
In real terms, what is the real? The number of registered voters come to talk about that has increased and will continue to increase. CVR is ongoing, and I believe the online thing, the last I checked, 7 to 8 more million voters have been added or will be added to the register of voters. More parties may be registered. All the associations that meet qualification will be registered. There are more parties to monitor. And yes,
actually, the number of parties have reduced, because when I will have 80.
Yes.
Previously, we
92.
have
correct.
So
but they might increase for next election.
Yes.
Because every association that meets the requirement will have to be registered. If it's not registered within 30 days, it will be deemed registered. The electoral bill tried to extend that to 60 days.
Thank you. Mr. Representative Jenny, beyond the explanation provided, because there's still a question of opportunity cost here.
Absolutely.
If I have 10 Naira, should I buy food or should I buy cap? Especially if I am hungry. So beyond the economic or the mathematical justification that so many things have risen and so on, and nobody is imputing anything. The issue is, what is the moral justification in a country where 40% of people are deemed poor?
More than 40.
So that's the official figure. 40% are poor by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, which means they lack the capacity to live by 350 Naira a day, based on their own local statistical estimates. What's the moral justification of spending so much to elect public officers of the kind we already have now?
Well, first and foremost, with due respect, to my Oga, I think, the country economy cannot sustain this election cost. There must be something that must be done drastically to reduce cost of election in Nigeria. Otherwise, if you say, okay, this amount is okay, the next election is going to be, also, again, twice. We've seen other countries conducting election, even countries that are more popular. Their number is more larger population. Why must we not learn to do things in the best possible manner? Why must we be so why are we spending so much, when we can actually do a lot of saving? Our procurement system is totally inflated system, where a lot of things that we procure, there's no value for money. So I think rather than justifying this cost, is to sit down, and that is why National Assembly has the responsibility to sit down to see what is really possible. Because you cannot just, in the mix of this poverty, in the mix of financial crisis that we have, remember the country had gone to recess, and we are not out of recess. In reality, the country is still battling a recession. Nigerians are in recession because the life of Nigerians have not. That is, but the reality between I and you know that Nigerians are still battling for survival. Decent livelihood has become an illusion now. Graduates, people with even masters are roaming around. They have no access to decency of life. So we cannot actually, even if INEC require that much money, we need to sit down and see, in all honesty, what is it that we can do? Because largely, most of this thing, like you said, yes, is payment allowances. Look, if we are serious about this country, these bogus allowances and this thing can actually be reduced.
Thank you. So, Barrister, I'm asking you this question not as a former INEC staff, but as a lawyer.
Yes.
Many legal positions also have moral implications. So even if it is okay, even if the government will have the money to give INEC, and obviously they are going to find the money and give INEC, do you think it's morally justifiable in a country like ours?
The question is it morally justifiable for what?
To pay this amount of money, to spend this amount, to spend not just the 305 billion, but to keep spending higher and higher. Just listen, in 2015 it was 108 billion. In 2019 it was 189 billion. That's about 80 billion naira increase. This year is 305 billion. That's 120 billion naira increase. What's the moral justification of this? It's a fair question.
Well, I'm a lawyer, so I concern myself with legality rather than morality.
Okay.
But let me answer you in different ways. What was the budget 5 years ago? Total budget of the country. It has not remained the same. It has continued to rise. And that is the reality of where we find ourselves. Democracy is expensive. There will be cheaper forms of government. They're better. And what you should look at is there value for money? And that's why I agree with every assumption. Is there value for money? And that's what the Procurement Act tries to do, to ensure that you get best value for money. But, and when you say, look, it's always good to compare apples with apples, not apples with cheese. How much do other countries spend? In your intro, you said one of the highest in the world. That's not correct. That's not correct.
It's entirely correct. Go on.
No, sir. First of all, there are two ways of looking at it. Are you talking of GDP? Are you talking of per relative GDP? Are you talking of per voter?
Or per capita?
Is that what you're talking about? Two, and internationally, what is correct is how much per voter per dollar. That's what you should be looking at. Look, and see where law and morality don't mix. In India, for example, they used electronic voting. When the study first started, I don't know what it is today, is that they didn't have all elections in one day.
Okay.
Their law permitted that. The law here now, both in the old act and the bill and everything, says all elections should be held in one day. Now, one way of making things more efficient is, okay, let us only procure 20,000 BVAS machines, and then we rotate elections over a period of 1 month, going from one state to the other. That will be cheaper, and Nigerians prepared for that.
Okay.
There are several cost-saving measures, but there's a price to pay. What you take on the right, you have to balance on the left.
Thank you. So we've just come about to the end of the program now. Because I started with you, let me end with Maila Awal just for 60 seconds. Now, one of the significance of what he has said relates to what Jega, the former INEC chairman, said, that it is the indiscipline, or at least implied, the indiscipline of Nigerians themselves that make elections so expensive in the country. That's why you require all these high-level technologies. You require, sophisticated ballot papers, sophisticated, and so on and so forth. Does it mean that indiscipline Nigerians are paying in another way?
I mean, obviously, this is the consequences of our not doing things rightly. If we continue to do things the way we are doing, we will definitely continue to experience this. And that is not really good. And that's not what democracy stands for. And that's what Nigerians who fought for democracy, have fought for. Unfortunately, you see, those who fought for democracy, those who suffered to have democracy, they have been ambushed. Even the abuse is now being a threat for saying do the right thing. So those who are beneficiary of even dictatorship are the ones who have hijacked and who have cornered everything. So you cannot even speak. Then you are being seen as a threat, simply because you say, let's do the right thing in the country. Let's stop rigging. Let's ensure electoral transparency. It has now sound like if you are, depriving some people, from their normal way of doing things. So Nigerians generally, all of us, we must play our role to ensure that we will minimize the cost of election and work toward having more transparent and accountable election in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. On that note, Nigerians, all of us, we must do everything we can to minimize the cost of elections and to ensure more accountable and free and fair elections and government. Thank you very much for coming over, Barrister Osaze Uzi, and thank you very much, Madam Awal Rafsanjani. On this note, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you for staying with us, viewers, and we also hope you'll be here with us again tomorrow when we bring you another edition of Daily Politics on Trust TV. Good night.